BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. Largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, MMA. Head to BetOnline today. Get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline. The game starts here. Welcome to another edition of Believe in Giants. Bob.Papa, two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks, back from Deutschland. And, Carl, it was a long trip home.
It was.
After weathering that game, for sure.
Yeah, it was. And here we are at the break point, literally, of this Giants team and season. They've got some decisions to make from a personnel standpoint, on-field personnel standpoint. And I think, it's time for that. They've got to make a lot of different adjustments, Bob. And we're gonna cover a lot, but I want to address, before we start talking about quarterback, I want to address this call for Brian Daboll to be fired. I think it's crazy. And when you want to evaluate whether or not Brian Daboll is the right coach for the New York Giants, is the right coach for today's NFL, I want you to think about something. And yes, your quarterback will factor into this. They've had games, right, where they've had opportunities to win, but they have lost 6 games by 1 score. Now, let's go back and look at what those 6 games look like. Probably every game, there's probably 14 points legitimately left on the board because of bad decision-making, indecision-making, or mistakes. Nothing that the defense has done. That's number one. Number two, when you look at the Giants offense, look at all the plays. And every week, you guys here on the social medias are posting wide open guys every week. You guys love to do that. You'll freeze frame it. Sometimes you'll see it after. I mean, you'll see a lot of guys open, right? Well, that tells me that you got a coach who can scheme it, right? Now, players have got to execute it, and that starts with the guy who handles the football every single down. But if you think that Brian Daboll is the wrong coach for the Giants, and for today's NFL, you're wrong. And I don't care what somebody sits up and, you got people that want to create these scenarios. Well, he hasn't won in X amount of years, this, that, and the other. Look at their margin of defeat. And every one of those defeats, go back and look at the games and see just how many points were left on the board of guys wide open that were not seen or bad decisions. Cincinnati was not a 1-score game. It was a 10-point game, but literally it was a 1-score game. And your quarterback throws an interception going into the red zone.
Well, Carl, I could go back to last year, and I can go back to games last year where, Tyrod Taylor completely malfunctions the end of the first half and the end of the game in Buffalo.
Yep.
It's another one. There's been a bunch of them that they've had a chance to win that they haven't won. Now, I know you are what your record says you are, but continue.
So I say all of that to say that they have the right coach. He can scheme it up. I think they have the right coaching staff. And again, I'm not going to make the case for some bull crap that, the writers are putting out there. I'm just going to say from an X's and O's standpoint, he gets it done. Now, more goes into coaching than just the X's and O's. And there's a reason why this team is where they are. And I just gave you the good.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to give you the bad. It's a team that lacks discipline. It's a team that does not value possessions, no situational awareness, a team that has not defensively made adjustments. And so that falls on the quarterback, I mean, on the head coach as well. I say this, and I love Daboll to death, and he's my guy. And like I said, he's the right coach for this. But I think I'm going to say this right now. Daboll, lean into your DNA. I don't sit in any coaches' meetings, right? So I don't know the message that he's sending. I know that your players like you. I think they love you. They love playing for you. But they are not reciprocating whatever you're giving them. And now it's time to be the guy that your DNA, your coaching DNA, your Nick Saban, your Bill Belichick. I know you wanted to depart from all of that, and naturally you're not those guys. But the principles that they subscribe to, that you have subscribed to for winning consistently and being consistently good, you're going to have to lean into that because your guys like you. Now it's time to hold some of these guys accountable and make them hold each other accountable. Again, I don't sit in your meetings. You might say, shut the fuck up, Carl, because I do this. But it's not materializing.
Yeah, it's not translating no matter what you
right.
say. It's
So,
translating into too many close losses and too many
right.
mistakes in games that are winnable.
Correct. And so when you can give them the right things, put them in the right positions to win, to be successful, that part of the coaching, you got it. The other parts I know you got too, because again, you subscribe to the principles of constant and consistent winning, and you know what it takes. You know what you and the staff in Alabama did. You knew what you and the staff in New England did for a long time, sustained, even in Buffalo. Now you got to lean into that because your players like you. Your players trust you. You can still be the SOB when you don't get what you need. And I'm going to say this, why, Dave? You have a wide receiver, your number one draft pick, who's now starting to develop bad habits. And I look at film, you look at film, he looks at film, you guys probably pointed out. Don't be afraid to coach your good players. Not saying that you are. And I'm going to say this to Coach Grow, lean into your DNA because I know you know how your father coached, the best in the business. He is. And the reason he's the best in the business because he had no problem motherfucking Lawrence Taylor or myself or any other of the great players that played for him. If we weren't getting it done, he made sure that we knew. He was the guy who says, I'm going to hold you accountable just like I hold the guy who's a free agent accountable. You're my best player. I need you to be my best player all the time. And I say that, and I've been saying it all week. I mean, all year, your best players have to be your best players. That is where I got that from because I had coaches and I wanted to be coached. Your best players, I'll tell you this much too. Your best players want to be coached. It's okay. It's okay that you're friends. It's okay that you have conversations off work hours. But the conversations you got to have now is, hey, we love each other. I'm going to try to make sure you get what you're supposed to get out of this game, but you got to give me what I need for me to coach you better. And when you see the bad habits, right? When you see the self-inflicted errors, it's killing your game plan, right? And every week it's the same thing. Defensively, you got, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games where you're giving up over 125 yards, 149 yards, Washington, Carolina, 188, probably could have been 200 if dude didn't get hurt. Philadelphia could have run for 300 on you, right? Pittsburgh, 167 yards. Cincinnati, or the second Washington game, 149 yards. Cincinnati, 21 yards. But you guys ain't getting better defensively. And all the empty calories of, oh, you hold people to, low percentages on third downs. Well, that's because they never get to third downs. So don't emphasize what you're doing good. Let's just focus on what you're doing bad. Don't worry about what could happen next. Fix what's in front of you. The fact that Bobby Okereke is a shell of who he was last year, and it ain't because he's a worse player. It's because they are not doing something. I don't know what it is, Shane Bowen, what it is, but this got to be a player who factors in your defense. And right now, he's out there indecisive, which he's never been his whole career. He's out there late to plays, not sure what that assignment is, but he's not a dumb football player and he's not a bad football player. Got to make adjustments, because whatever you're doing now is not good enough when you can't stop a nosebleed. It's just not. Still saying you guys are the right coaches for this team, because you can make plays when you need to make plays, but you don't make plays when you have to make plays. And you got to get all of that to come together. You're a poor tackling team some weeks. The next week, it looks like it's blown assignments. Guys looking out of position. But you got 3 runs. Outside zone right, outside zone left, inside zone. Fix it. Fix it. It's good to be, everybody can like everybody, right? Everybody falls in love with Azeez Ojulari. They know what to do over there. They just run at him, right?
Right.
Brian Burns is playing his ass off, but he guesses every once in a while. He'll guess and get hooked. But those times that he guessed wrong, which is not a lot, but they end up being the 25-yard runs. And you're not good enough to overcome those. Your cornerback, Deonte Banks, bad habits. He's created bad habits. Coaches on this staff come from really good lineage. They have distinguished themselves as not robots or clones of, but there are certain things that you guys got to lean back into to get what you need, the desired result out of this team. Yeah, I know people are going to say, well, if he had a better quarterback, they would X, Y, and Z. Yeah, if quarterback played better, they probably would have 14 more points a game, right? That's not an issue. I mean, that's not disputable. That's not a disputable issue. But the fact remains, they can't stop anybody. The fact remains that despite how bad the quarterback has played, there are opportunities that are missed, that are dropped. And that's not excusing the quarterback or making an excuse because he has not played well. Let's just be on the record for that. But you got the inconsistency of all the other players on this team. And yet I still say that Brian Daboll is the coach for this team because he can coach in today's NFL. The part that he has to get, that the rest of them have to get, and I don't know. He like I said, he might tell me I'm full of shit. But I know they like him. I know they like playing for him. But they're developing bad habits. And that's a coaching thing too. And it's not necessarily coaches cracking the whip. It's coaches to the better players saying, you guys got to hold each other accountable too. And that's, I posted yesterday this great clip from Darius Butler on the Pat McAfee show talking about, the difference between good teams and bad teams, winning teams and losing teams are the little things.
Yep.
The little things that you practice that you got to take out to the field, the little things that you quiz each other on, man to man, teammate to teammate, to make sure that they got their part of it done. So when you get there on Sunday, like he said, the little things don't become big things because you already have got it buttoned up and you're holding each other accountable. So listen, They've got to fix. And I know for some fans, they'd rather this season just keep going the way it is because of whatever the draft situation is. That's now how it works because a lot of people going to lose jobs if it keeps going this way. And
Correct.
that's not just play. I mean, not just coaches, that's players too. Um, don't tell me that your wide receiver is playing the way he's playing because he doesn't like his quarterback. Well, he's got to play. He was drafted to play. Everybody's an independent contractor. So do your job, do your part, right? But you
Right.
are
Because, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, because there's all this hype, right? And it's like, okay, so the quarterback is not what everybody had hoped it would be this year. But still, man, finish your routes, hustle back to the ball on a scramble drill, run, play with urgency because it's your name on your back. And, the you want to be, believe it or not, there's been a standard set here, right? And we
Mhm.
always talk about the standard that was set here by your teams of the 80s, and we can go back to the 50s, and then the Coughlin Giants kind of picked up that standard of a certain way to play the game. Well, there's also been a standard set here with some receivers that have
Yeah.
played for this franchise. Whether it's Homer Jones in the late 60s, and the Giants aren't known for their receivers, but Odell Beckham Jr. set a standard for what an elite wide receiver looks like. And
Hakeem Nicks.
Hakeem Nicks set a standard. He was unbelievable until he hurt his hip, ironically, against Tampa. There have been guys that Amani Toomer's, his came along a little bit differently, right? As a second round pick, punt returner, and then he went on to become a consistent champion. But there have been guys that have stepped on the field and were the best player on the field from day one.
Yeah.
And right now, it's not looking that way.
But here's the thing. Next year is not promised. You've got to do what you have to do this year. Don't tell me when he gets a better quarterback, he'll be better. No, he's developing bad habits.
Correct.
And young players who develop bad habits become old players with bad habits. They become old players that you can't win with, right? You want to be the guy that everyone fears, right? So you've got to continuously, no matter what the frustration level is, you got to continue to be a high level attention to detail guy. Again, I applaud a guy like Jalen Hyatt, came in ready to go, never got down, right? He had an injury. He stepped in. That's Coach Grow coaching. Coach him, coach the other guys too the same way. Because Hyatt came into the game prepared, caught a lot of passes in this game, but you can't have your best players setting bad examples. You just can't. So from a coaching standpoint, lean into your DNA. Lean into the principles that you guys have been a part of for a very long time. I'm not saying clone Nick Saban or Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel, but you know the principles that they subscribe to for winning, and you were a part of that. Don't be afraid to coach your players, right? They like you. They know that you can call a great game. Now you got to hold them accountable and make them hold each other accountable because it's not consistent enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because there's no need to actually recap the actual game and the loss because all of these things that you're speaking to are all wrapped up into that. Meaning, um, you know, Hubbard 26-yard run, Hubbard 26-yard. Like we've seen this song and dance before, right? You're in red zone defense. You got third and goal. Everybody's playing the defense correctly except one guy. You're in zone, and he decides to chase somebody, which leaves the tight end Sanders wide open in the back of the end zone, making Isaiah Simmons. He's like looking around. He was in his spot. He was doing his job, but one
Yeah.
guy decided to freelance. Happened on a bunch of other plays. Now, I know there are some out there, and I've seen all the posts like don't dare talk about the Giants defense. This is all about the offense. No, it's a team
Shit.
game. It's a team game. You know, how about you're going against an awful offense and a quarterback who their people were saying before the game, people that I know that work, he's not our guy. We got to move on from this guy. But it is what it is right now. This is what we got, so we're going to play with it. How about put the ball? How about put the game in his hands? And how about
Yeah.
not let him run all over you?
Yeah.
To
And they're
set a
only
tone, a positive
right.
message.
But okay, that didn't creep up on this Giants defense.
It's been going on for weeks now.
But here's the other part. You're getting beat with the same type of runs every week. But here's the other part. If you know that you're facing a quarterback who's not going to really be able to beat you with his arm, they're not creeping up on you with their runs. You know they have to run the football. So your game plan going in is not to fucking worry about what could happen in the past. Worry about what's hurting you now. Fix what's hurting you now. And if you need to change, it's like this. You're sitting on the side of the road with 2 flat tires, and you're worried about whether your spark plug's going to last for another month or 2. Well, fix your 2 tires, and then when you get to the other part of it, you make that adjustment. But you just can't look at a game plan and say, well, we got to worry about this and this guy and this guy. No, they got 2 guards that are pretty good in Carolina, and their only shot was running the football. And did they run the football? Yep, they sure did. They ran it for darn near 200 yards. So if that's their only shot to win, then you got to stop that first. You got to stop that first. Is it coaching? Is it players? It's all a combination because they're a team. But you can't go into 6 games lost by 1 score and think, yeah, the quarterback could have given you a margin of 2 or 3 more scores. Yeah, but your defense, they don't even have a 1-score lead if your safety is where he's supposed to be.
Right, because that's how they won all these games in 2022. Come from behind, get the stop at the right time, and keep it within striking distance of being able to pull off a win, right?
Yeah. But the thing is, Bob, when you have backup players in, guy who knows he's got to go in, because Dane Belton didn't just get thrown in the game during the game. He knew all week that Pinnock was going to be out. Okay, attention to detail. Your other best players, you got to hold him accountable during the week. Just like Darius Butler said, it's those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday practices, those Monday walkthroughs where you start to quiz each other to make sure everybody knows what they're supposed to do. Don't assume that the guy who's been watching the game and running down on special teams for the last 7 weeks is going to know exactly what he wants to do, what you need him to do in certain situations. Yeah, he's a pro, he gets paid, but he's a backup for a reason, right? So all of you guys in that defensive backfield, y'all got to hold each other accountable. You got to make sure that everybody knows what everyone's assignment is. That's not a coaching thing, right? I know Jerome Henderson does a great job preparing these guys, but now as players, y'all got to hold each other accountable. You got to make sure that that guy knows his situational football. Okay, we're here in the red zone. Look for this, because they didn't give them an exotic. They didn't give the Giants an exotic look on that play. Look, because 10 other players knew exactly what to do, and one guy didn't. So this play didn't catch them by surprise. But you got to make sure everybody on the defense knows exactly what they're supposed to do. That is a player-to-player, peer-to-peer accountability. Coaches, you wear a C on your chest for a reason. Don't be afraid to coach them. They trust you, they like you, and your best players want to be coached. Trust me, in this league, we see it's becoming rampant in this league where coaches don't want to coach. I'm not saying that's the situation here, but I'm telling you, and I've heard it from others, they don't want to coach these good players anymore. Well, these good players want to be coached, and don't let them develop bad habits. And if you come from a place where you subscribe to the principles of winning, every tenet of it. You got to lean into that now, because that's the only way you as a staff are going to be able to get out of it. And then your players, they got to start holding each other accountable, because there's user error in every situation that they have to score. You know, we saw the flea flicker, two guys running wide open, quarterback can't get it, missed opportunity. Now, you know, Tyrone Tracy, he fumbled the last opportunity. It wasn't the opportunity to win. He didn't blow the game. It was just one more opportunity missed. Well, he fumbled. Yes, he's supposed to hold on to the football. How about the guys up front valuing that possession as well, valuing that series, knowing that you got to go down and win, you got to get everything right. Well, he got hit in the backfield. He didn't get hit 2 yards, 3 yards, 5 yards down the field and fumble. That fumble occurred in the backfield. There's guys in front of him blocking. So everybody has to be accountable.
All right, let's get to the quarterback, because we got to get to the quarterback. You and I have been big Daniel Jones supporters. We said at the beginning of the year, this is the final 17-game test. I'm not sure if it's going to be 17 games at this point, because unfortunately, Carl, it just appears that his confidence, decision-making, everything has unraveled before our eyes. He looks nothing. Forget about like the player from 22. He looks nothing like the player from his rookie year when he had 24 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. And you're like, wow, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions for a rookie. And his leading receiver was Darius Slayton. He had Golden Tate, and he had a bunch of other guys. Saquon only played in 13 games that year, had barely 1,000 yards rushing. And I mean, you watch this game and there's people open, and he's not trusting anything that he's seeing at this point. I mean, it's double clutching. It's there, and he won't pull the trigger. It's there, and he won't pull the trigger. And by the time he pulls the trigger, it's late. And I mean, that flea flicker just kind of summed up everything, because, you know, you always talk about empty calories, and it's like, wow, look at what they're leaving on the table in all these games. And I know Daboll's frustrated about it. And there's, you know, you look at the games, right? They got outplayed by Minnesota, heartily outplayed. And Jones was coming off the ACL and everything. First game back, Rodgers didn't look good in his first game back. Kirk Cousins looked lousy in his first game back. You're coming off some traumatic injuries. But now, Rodgers is another story. He's 41, but Cousins is settled in. And then you look at the Philadelphia game. They were outclassed.
Yeah.
Okay. They were out. But all these other games, these games are all been winnable. How many times this year has he had the ball late in games with chances to win the games? And not only that, in this week, they had the ball with a chance to win the game, and he turned it over.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Tracy should have caught the ball or whatever, ball placement, this, that, and the other thing. But you never felt like there was any threat that he was going to throw a touchdown pass to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's the offense. It's hard. It's hard to be productive. You're looking at it, and it just looks like a struggle. And then when you go back and you look at all the missed opportunities, that's not a coaching thing. That's a player thing. And he is, for wherever he started, he's not there. He's worse. He didn't get better. Yeah, he's capable of making some plays in the NFL. He's capable of making some plays for your team, which he does every game, but he makes a lot of bad plays. The indecision, it's hurting them, the missed opportunities. And, you know, again, I think he's like a tangled ball of string now that he just can't unknot himself. He's just in a space that is not productive. It's not helpful to what they need to get accomplished as a team. Now, again, it takes 11 guys, and we just went through all the other stuff. But yeah, he touches the ball every single down, and he's got to be the guy who makes great decisions with the football, especially. when you have it schemed open for you and you don't pull the trigger. You can't win that way. You can win with a few bad plays, but when you scheme it up, and you only get a few of those a game, but when you get guys running wide open and you can't pull the trigger on it, you basically shot yourself of any opportunity to win a football game.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that the flea flicker just kind of was the icing on the cake, right? I mean, you got two guys running wide open. Sure, Illuminor missed his block, but at that point in time, like Phil Simms was explaining on that play, which I think Phil said in his career, he was 13 for 13 on the flea flicker, including, by the way, pulling it off in a Super Bowl. So I think he knows what he's talking about. But he's like, you read the cross first. It goes, the cross was there. If you have time, you see if the deep ball's open. But your first read is the cross. How many times did he hit McConkey running
Yeah,
that Wandale Robinson route?
yeah,
And it's like the pause. And because the protection broke down, you only had the one shot, and he didn't
yeah,
take the one shot.
yeah. And again, I mean, the quarterback situation is going to be what it's going to be, and I'm going to support the guy they have in there. But just because they change quarterbacks does not mean that your defense can continue to play it the way they're playing. Doesn't mean that your wide receivers can continue to drop balls or run sloppy routes, right? Everybody. And yeah, hopefully, whatever they do at that position, it injects something into the team. But as individuals, y'all got to hold each other accountable, because it's the little things that's killing you on both sides of the football, the inconsistencies.
Yeah, I mean, and what do coaches always say? Who gives you the best chance to win,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if you can say his name and say that's the answer,
Well,
right?
it hasn't been the answer this year. You've won 2 games and you left a lot of points on the field, and there are a lot of mistakes. Um, the offensive line for the most part has been functioning, right? You've had a running game to complement the passing game. So these are all things that are in place to help your quarterback, right? The Pittsburgh game, they were playing complementary football until they didn't, until you don't set your pass protection, right? At the most crucial point in the game, and then you lose it as a result of that. So, they're going to make whatever decision they make. I'm going to be fine with it. But what I'm not fine with is a defense that has not fixed problems, a defense that has not figured out how to have your best player or your second best player, if Dexter Lawrence is your best, get him involved in your defense. And it's no excuse for me for why Bobby Okereke is getting washed in the sauce. He's getting lost in the sauce, washed back on plays, can't get over a block. You got to be able to get your best player involved. He did not regress. He's still Bobby Okereke, but we haven't seen or heard from him enough. You got to figure that out. And if that means making some adjustments up front so that his reads are cleaner, and you can do that. It's, you can predefine where your defensive linemen are going to go. There are so many things that you can do in those instances. And I'm sure Shane Bowen knows it, but he's got to lean into that. Like, again, the DNA of where these guys come from and where they've coached, it's always been put your best players in the position to have success, right? You never handicap your best players. Your best players give you the best chance. You got to figure out how to get him going. I'm talking independent of what fans want to see the rest of the season be, because they want to get whatever draft choice they want. These guys have jobs. They have jobs to protect, not just coaches, but players. You look like shit on film. Whoever the next guy is that's coming in to coach, or next team you go to, they're going to look at you and be like, oh, he's not worth X, Y, and Z. So everybody has a job to do. And so you can't say, well, season was going bad and I didn't play hard, or season was going bad, I didn't run my routes correctly. Well, just like what you heard Terry McCurlin say after the Washington game about the lazy tendencies of Deontay Banks, that made the circuit. Now everybody knows that's what you do, right? Everybody knows that you're susceptible to certain things because you haven't gotten better. Players have to get better, regardless of if you have the ability, you got to go out and play. Coaches have got to lean into their DNA. This is a staff that knows that. And again, they might say, Carl, we're doing it. You don't know what you're talking about, because I don't sit in meetings. But what I can see a head coach who can call a hell of a football game, because it's evident by the amount of plays that are left on the field as a result of user error or bad decision-making by a quarterback. So I know he's a good coach. I know he's the right coach, but they got to lean into some different things, because you have a C on your chest as coach. That means you got to coach them. Your good players, your best players, you got to coach them. You can't have these bad habits developing that I'm starting to see from Neighbors, because I know he wants to be great. Coach him, make him be exactly, hold him accountable to what he wants to be. He wants to be the most dominant receiver in football. Don't sit back and watch him, coach him. You got to coach him. You got to point out to him, hey, you got to run this route better. Hey, if it's 3rd and 5, I need you at 7 and come back, right? If it's a crossing route, I need you to push vertical before you cross, because J.C. Horn is just on you right off the line of scrimmage. Give him something else to think about. Those are the things that you tell your best players. That's how you make them the most dominant in the game. And then you got to get these young players out of bad habits. And they're a young team. Young teams need direction. They need coaching, but they don't need, they have a friend, they have trust, right? But you have to make sure that your most senior players are holding these young players accountable. Young players make mistakes. You got to live with some of them. Some of them you cannot, right? The Dane Belton deal in the end zone, you can't live with that. But it's up to everybody. Hey, you're in here this week for Jason. Here are the situations. When that situation comes up in the game, there's got to be some communication with the rest of the guys in that bunch formation to let him know what he's supposed to be doing. That's the player accountability that has to occur. Because if they're coaching him in the meeting, he's like, yeah, and then they're walking through it in practice, and then the same thing shows up in the game and he vapor locks, or he just does his own thing, that's not acceptable, right? So everybody's in it together. They're a team, and they have to be able to work well together. And if you like your coach and you want this to continue to be your coach, then you got to do your part too, right? And I haven't seen one single player say they don't like him, or that he's dumb and he can't scheme them up, because he can.
It's more about those just scheming it up, right? It's about the entire team functioning.
Yeah.
Carl, the loud minority is the ones, keep losing. But tell that to the fans that pay their PSLs and their season tickets that go to the games, or the people that buy all the stuff, the people that sit in front of their TV every weekend, kind of building their day around Giants football, or listening on the radio, that are emotionally invested in the team. They want the team to win. And you'll worry about next year, because I think about the year Peyton Manning was hurt, and Bill Polian, who's a Hall of Famer, was the GM of the Indianapolis Colts, and they brought in Kerry Collins late at the end of it didn't work, and it's like, wow, they're going to have the number 1 pick. Well, they did. They got Andrew Luck, but Bill Polian got fired.
Mhm.
Right? Like this whole thing about, well, got to get the best draft pick. People will be fired on your way to 2-15. Like,
Yeah.
there's no guarantees that you're going to be here to even use that draft pick. Right. And even though the owner has said, barring unforeseen circumstances, however, a 2-win season is not going to cut it. So, like,
Yeah.
they're going to have, and I think a majority of the fans want to see them win some games here. Forget about the draft pick, because guess what? There's no guarantee in the draft pick. There's no surefire quarterback in this draft per se.
Sure.
And I
Well,
don't
how
know.
about this? No surefire uh, thing in a draft pick. JJ McCarthy he never played a down, a regular season down for the Minnesota Vikings. Now they're doing fine without him, but if everybody was hanging their hopes on him being the guy, well, you don't know what he is right now, because as a team they're doing a better job, but he hasn't taken the field yet. So there's no guarantee with top draft picks. You got to get the rest of the team fixed too. And they got to start playing that way, not just, oh, we'll just wait until the next guy comes and then we'll pick it up. It never works that way in the NFL. It never works. And even if someone says, well, the Commanders, they picked it up. You know what? No, Terry McCurlin was a bad SOB long before they changed the quarterback. They had good players that were playing hard every game. They just couldn't get out of their own way, kind of similar to what the Giants are. So when they got a guy, it wasn't like everybody was just slogging along waiting for the next guy and then they were going to flip the switch. Terry McCurlin's switch was always on, and that's why he's the best player on that team with that quarterback. And there's Zach Ertz, same way. He never his switch was never off in the losing season. So their best players continued to fight. So when they got better people around them, this is what you're seeing. And this is what the Giants have got to do.
Look, this is going to be a long week for Giant social media fans. For those that engage on social media, there's going to be mudslinging. There's going to be guys taking on us, taking on beat reporters, like all this other stuff, because there's this angry mob of I told you so.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? You're not going to have an answer as to who the starting quarterback of the Giants is going to be for the Tampa game. If I know anything about Dabes, he's going to keep that thing as tight to the vest on the decision that they make internally. And we could guess until the cows come home as to if he's going to replace Daniel Jones, which it sure looks like the arrow is pointed in that direction, with whom he's going to replace him with. Because I'm not, who knows what, they're going to make their determination on who they feel gives them the best chance to win the Cowboys game. Because here's the thing, Carl. And it's kind of like a final thought for me. Whoever they decide is going to take the football to start the Tampa Bay game is also going to be the player that starts on Thanksgiving. Because you ain't gonna take Daniel Jones out, and then replace him with somebody, only to replace him with somebody else.
Right.
If they are, and I think they're gonna replace Daniel Jones as a starting quarterback, I got to assume that whoever they put in there is someone that they're gonna feel comfortable with playing 2 games in 4 days.
Yeah. Look, there's accountability all around. I am not, again, I'll say it again, I am not in favor of a coaching change, because I think they got a damn good coach. I think he's the right coach for today's NFL. But I will say this, he's got to lean into his DNA. Maybe he is. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it is players not responding and holding each other accountable. But he's the right coach. And if you want to know why, all the plays that are left on the field and how he keeps his teams in games, with the exception of 2. They're 1-score games, and then those one-score games could be two-score victories if they had better decisions and better execution. So that's all I got. You guys have at it, but they're in it together. Players and coaches fix it. Defensively, y'all better figure out how to get Bobby Okereke going, because what I'm seeing from him is just the opposite of what he's all about. Like, he is too good to be a non-factor in this defense. Your best players have to be your best players. Give them a chance to do that.
Yep. And I think I think the players collectively have become enamored with the sack total, leading the league in sacks and all that other stuff. And you know what? The most effective sacks are the ones that come on 3rd and 12.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
if you're going to be giving up this kind of rushing yardage,
you never get to 3rd and 12.
Correct. All right. We won't be back until next week for a preview of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm sure that we will have some interesting news to discuss at that point in time.
Yeah.
Because Joe Shane is going to address the media. We're taping this on Tuesday. He's going to address the media at 3:00 on Tuesday, and I'm sure he's going to say a lot and say nothing, because he's not going to reveal anything that goes outside of the inner circle, which is between him, the coaching staff, and ownership. It's going to be vanilla. And that's part of the job.
Yeah.
You don't want the loose lips. That hasn't worked in the past and for other people.
That's correct.
All right, Carl. Enjoyed the time. I wore the shirt in honor of our guys.
Love that.
It was great seeing those guys over
Yeah,
there.
it was.
And I know
Germany was great.
I know Starter had an unbelievable week in Germany. There were a
Yeah,
lot
we
of
did.
wins except for the game.
Yeah. The anticlimactic aspect of the week. Yeah. So that was the thing we all went there for, is the victory. So we'll keep plugging away, man, and trying to give it to you as straight as possible, and not try to sugarcoat it. That's what we got.
All right, how we like to end it.
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Believe in Giants.